Okay, we're on air. Welcome back. Welcome back to Schedule 1, Episode 2. A very short, brief hiatus before this episode. Uh, that can be attributed to many things, mostly just being lazy. But we're back at it. We don't give up. We're feeling good. Hope you're feeling good too, because today we're talking about the feel-good drug. MDMA, Molly, ecstasy. It's got a myriad of names. But what actually is it? What makes teenagers group together by the thousands, pop this white powder, and dance to shitty electric music for hours and hours on end? So, after that intro, what do you think, Kurt? What is Molly?
Well, I guess the easiest way to describe it is Molly is a psychoactive drug with its own classification, empathogen, which it's a really unique chemical, and
Now, you say empathogen. What is that?
and a pathogen is it's essentially a drug that just invokes a feeling of empathy, connectedness, oneness, understanding. A fantastic therapy drug.
Mhm.
But Molly was so special that it got its own classification of empathogen.
Okay, yeah. Now we hear a lot about, empathogen effects with Molly, but what about stimulant effects?
Oh, well, I mean, just anyone taking it, some of the obvious stimulant effects, and I think the most common would be jaw clenching.
Hmm.
Um, a
Yeah,
a piece of gum, a mouth guard, a pacifier, something like that will almost be necessary for
yeah.
a role
The
just because you're so.
gum is key. Gum is key. Unless you want to wake up the next morning feeling like you sucked off a bathroom of dudes, then you can want some gum. But besides the effects, what is it? What does it look like? How do you spot Molly?
Well, real Molly is I believe it comes in like a clear or white powder, but
Hmm.
you can find it. Usually, if it's by itself, it would just be a crystal or a powderized crystal. But you can find it pressed into pills with other things. It's really common to mix MDMA with an amphetamine or caffeine.
Just
Uh,
something to cut the pill and make it. The caffeine kind of adds effects that the Molly doesn't really actually have. Amps you up and
Yeah,
the
the Molly by
painkiller
itself is
effects.
like it just puts you in a really happy and good mood. Like you want to go hug something and be lovey. But the a lot of times it is put like meth, for instance, will be put in there, and some kind of stimulant gives it the kick in the ass it needs to be one of the perfect rave drugs.
And I think the key is here when you cut MDMA is when you really get the term what people call ecstasy. And in Molly and MDMA are sort of synonymous in the street sense that Molly is pure MDMA, the purest form. And when you start cutting with, like Kirk said, other chemicals and other drugs, that's when you get ecstasy. And ecstasy is usually, the pressed tablets.
Yeah, there's a lot of misunderstanding amongst the terms. I've had dealers straight up tell me that Molly doesn't exist. Molly is just a combination of other drugs.
Yeah.
Um, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and I think that's definitely one of the biggest. I guess the other, if we're gonna go into like negative connotations, um, is I believe there's a myth that taking MDMA literally eats holes in your brain. I didn't know people actually believe this, but it is one of the propagated
Like
myths.
gaping holes in your brain, like worms would crawl out of in a horror movie.
Exactly, like splotches of brain that just get eaten away by Molly.
Mm. That would That'd be pretty sweet for a horror like Halloween costume. I might go as a recovering Molly addict for next Halloween with holes in my brain.
Now we're not scientists and we don't claim to be, but one of the things I think we're going to try to do is at least in very, very basic terms explain how these drugs do what they do or what it is that they're doing.
Mhm.
And essentially what Molly does when you take it is if you were to imagine your Okay, so serotonin is the feel good chemical, and whenever you do anything that makes you happy, your brain releases a little bit of it so that you can feel the pleasure from it. And you have a decent amount of it stored in your brain. Uh, there are some people that don't, but they have either certain conditions or there's different medication
There's,
for it.
there's
But
always, chemical imbalances in the brain, and
yeah,
everyone's different.
but essentially you have this vault, this water balloon filled with serotonin, and a little bit gets released whenever you do something that makes you happy. But with Molly, it goes in there and it pops the balloon, and it just floods your brain with serotonin for
Mhm.
a good 4 to 6 hours, really. And the after effects or the hangover can be not rough, but it's just you feel lethargic and tired. But yeah, essentially that's what Molly does to you. It just floods your brain with serotonin.
Yeah, I mean, very basically and simply, you're just gonna get really, really happy. That's very crude to say, but
Some might even say euphoric.
euphoric, happy, blissful, very, very common terms to describe the high. But before you get to the high, you have to ingest it.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, there's a number of ways you can ingest it, and that's really going to like affect your high. And so I think what the popular method is, the most common method is these are, the pre-pressed pills with happy faces on them, uh, ecstasy tablets. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, yeah. It's pop the Molly, I sweat. Woo. Most people just pop it or what they call parachute it, where you essentially, I think you just take the Molly and put it in the middle of like a piece of toilet
Toilet
paper.
paper, yeah.
Yeah, and then you touch the four corners together, spin it off, pull off the excess, and then you can just swallow that. I usually put mine in like little empty pill capsules,
Because we're not
but
peasants. That's why.
we're high rollers. But I would say that's the most common. It is really popular too to snort it. It definitely works if you snort it. But
Have you ever
what's
snorted
less
it?
popular yet, what people say more effective is what's called plugging. And it's where you essentially just shove it up your ass, which I'm not talking down to anyone that enjoys taking their drugs that way, but I'm not quite at that level yet.
I think once you're comfortable enough doing it, probably butt chugging is, I mean, the way to go.
Oh, I'm sure.
Medically, people say it is. If you're comfortable enough doing it, why not? Personally, me, I just like to swallow it through the mouth.
Yeah, I'm fine with that for right now.
But one day, who knows? I don't want to rule out anything because you never know what when life hands you lemons.
I'm still young and there are many doors that haven't been opened yet.
If somebody wants to pop a molly in my ass, why not? But after you pop molly in your ass, what should you expect?
Well, I haven't looked into it too deeply, but they say the onset of the effects is a lot more rapid and intense than it is normally. I think it's just a harder, more direct way to ingest the chemical.
And we kind of we chose Molly for this week's topic because it's very recent. We actually had a very good roll a few weeks ago.
Oh yeah, that's right.
We how much did you take?
I took an initial dose of 240 milligrams, and then I redosed, which I don't usually do. I redosed 30 milligrams, like 3.5, 4 hours into the roll. What about you?
Yeah, I think we did the same thing
Okay.
pretty much. Didn't you? You think you wrote it out, so we ended up being the same thing
Yeah,
for
yeah,
the
yeah.
most part. There's a little bit of size difference, but I think we weigh pretty much the same.
Yeah, I think
Uh,
it was like single digit milligrams that were the difference in the doses.
so I could say our experiences were probably on the same level without, you being a higher Molly level or a higher, more substance amount than I was.
Hmm.
And so let's go back to that trip. Uh, how do you describe the come up of that last trip?
Um, well, not just in that last trip, but in my experience, Molly always has a very angsty come up. Like
Mm-hmm.
for the first 20 or 25 minutes after you take it, you just feel like you're at the front of a roller coaster, slowly climbing that mountain.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you just get, I personally get fidgety. I like to like, I don't know, like just move my fingers around or like stretch with my legs and just fidget until it finally hits me. But yeah, the come up is just it's an anxious come up, but once you hit your stride, I mean it really kicks in. It feels absolutely incredible.
For me personally, I don't know if it's necessarily the Molly kicking in or it's me being nervous or angsty or whatever it is, but usually the Molly, I feel like I can sense it in me, at an early peak at least 15, 20 minutes in. I feel like I can sense it and I'm just kind of jittery,
Yeah.
uh, just kind of want to stretch your legs and, move them around a little bit. Just restlessness, I guess you would say. A restless feeling. But once it like really kicks in, it comes on you like a wave. Like
Yeah, that's a good way to
imagine
put it.
imagine gentle, loving like waves crashing over your body. And you can feel the sensation. It's just sort of like a soothing, very soothing, relaxed feeling for a little while.
Yeah.
And then you hit the peak. And the peak is, pretty intense on how much you're taking, of course.
Hmm.
Uh, I think last time your eyes were bugging out.
Yeah, so what he's referring to and what's pretty normal if you take a lot of MDMA is your eyes will vibrate back and forth incredibly quickly. Uh, a lot of people, well, I don't know about a lot, but some people can do it voluntarily, but they move. I mean, they move at a speed that you literally can't see anything. Like your vision is just you just see the world vibrating incredibly quickly for like 2 to 5 seconds until your eyes finally chill out.
uh, if you've ever like looked at someone staring out the window during a car trip and their eyes just flicker back and forth, that's a crude example. I don't know if you've ever done it, but it's almost
Hmm.
exactly what was going on here. It just looked like you were tweaking on some hard stuff, like when he had to get you to the rehab center. But
Yeah, I do like Molly, but it's a bit more it's a bit too stimulating for me. I really like it, but it's hard for me to get on board with just exactly how much it stimulates you.
mhm.
Especially at the doses that I take at, which I think these are pretty uncommon for people that take it in the 70 to 150 milligram range. But
Yeah, we forgot to disclose. What's the typical role? You're gonna have a lot of variety because somebody will say, "Yeah, I dropped a half G of Molly," and if you drop a half G of Molly, you may want to like go to the emergency room because you're probably gonna have some lasting long-term effects. And Molly is cut, and it's on the street value. You're never gonna find what the pure dose is. So there's a lot of conflicting reports. We personally believe, just like everyone else, that our Molly is it's graded correctly.
well, I mean, I have a testing kit, and every time I get it, I can prove that at least the people I bought the testing kit from say the
Uh,
chemical I have is MDMA.
We bought, what did we buy before?
Methadone.
We bought methadone off the street. And methadone, was it cut with opium? Like
I
an
believe
opiate
so,
substance?
yeah. I haven't looked too deeply into it, but when I was researching it after all this happened, yeah, I believe it is it's MDMA cut with some kind of opiate.
I think I've rolled twice on that. And I can say that, besides the opiate factor and the harms of opiates, that I really enjoyed the methadone rolls.
Hmm.
Really made me want to dance, just like Molly. I had the more stereotypical Molly effects. A lot of restlessness and wanting to just go all night. You know what I mean?
Yeah, see, that's really interesting because for me personally, when I take MDMA, I don't get energetic at all. Like maybe if I started dancing, I would really get into it, but I don't have the desire to start.
Yeah.
As opposed to like, again, I don't know if that's just me as an individual
Mm-hmm.
or if I don't know, maybe it's normal for most people not to want to dance and it's just how that's portrayed in the media. But yeah, for me with Molly, it's like I would call it mildly sedative for me, just because when I take it I really want to like fall into a bed or a couch
Mm-hmm.
and just really enjoy whatever I'm doing as opposed to like getting up and doing activities.
I think the dose we took it at 240 would be described as a very, higher end dose.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So
Almost psychoact or almost psychedelic.
so my experience with MDMA is the very first time I took a dose of 230, and it had some of the strongest psychedelic effects I've seen to this day. And
Do
I
you
really
remember
wanted
your
to.
trip when you took it the first time?
I remember bits and pieces of it. I think Molly, like you get so overwhelmed with stimuli that just part of your
Mm-hmm.
memory fails for the trip, or for the roll, I should say. But I remember a good part of it. But
Uh, what were you doing?
well, when me and my roommate took it, we done our research on Molly, but we weren't quite prepared for it. We thought people were saying like 200 is a really solid roll for like a party. We took it
Mhm.
Halloween night. They say like 200 is a really solid roll for a party, and we decided, let's bump it to 230 just to make sure it works. And my roommate took it 10 minutes before me, so he started feeling this intense come up, and this was both of our first times taking it. We didn't know what to expect.
Mhm.
He comes to me when we're inside an apartment. He's like, dude, we fucked up. We got to get out of here. We took way too much.
You know
And
it's
I
gonna get
was
good when you hear the dude we fucked up.
and I was still in the early come up, and I was just trying to calm down. I was like, yeah, sure, we can go outside, we can do whatever. And where my car was parked, there was like this small hill in front of it, and he was like, "Let's just go lay by the hill." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm on board with that." So we go and we just lay there for a minute, and it really kicks in. This heavy dose of MDMA kicks in while we're both laying there, and that's what we did the entire roll. We completely forgot that like you can stand up and go walk around and do whatever you want.
You were
But
just
for
so
like
overwhelmed. You were ground stuck. You were like
Oh
a.
yeah, we were just completely locked to the ground. Like I remember I was under a tree, and when I was looking at this tree, I would see the leaves change color as they were opening and closing in front of my eyes. When I would look into the sky, I would see the same it was cubes, but I would see the same geometric cubes completely across the sky. I was just in awe by the visuals I was seeing because I wasn't expecting that at all. And
Yeah.
plus, like when you would take your hand and just rub it over the grass, you would so sensitively feel every single blade of grass that you were touching. It was just, I mean, it was absolutely incredible. The idea of moving just never occurred to us. So
Yeah.
that's where we spent the first, well, not the first, the entire like 5 hour roll.
You were just ground stuck. You were stuck to it like a frying pan with no grease.
Yes.
You mentioned visuals. And I've never had a lot of visuals on MDMA. I've gotten more of like an emotional stimulative of like a feeling
hmm
effects.
So, as we mentioned earlier, MDMA is an empathogen, and it's being looked into right now as we speak for, and it's being approved by the FDA for therapeutic use, because when you take it, you just get this instant open connectedness with every other person you see, especially the people you're rolling with. And I mean, it's, taking it and just talking with the group I was rolling with, the few times I've taken it, I can definitely see why it would be an excellent therapeutic tool. But that's typically the effects you're going to feel at what I would consider the normal range, the range most people take MDMA. But when I don't know what this threshold is. I think it's different for everyone. But when you cross a certain threshold, parts of the MDMA get transferred into the more powerful and more psychedelic MDA inside your brain. And I think, I don't know, maybe that threshold for me personally is 220 milligrams. So whenever I take over 220, I get a little bit of MDA in my roll, and it just makes it that much more psychedelic. And that's where all my visuals come from. Because sorry to keep interrupting you.
No, you gotta go.
I had heavy visuals with the last roll that we did like 5 days ago or whenever it was.
Now you said MDA. Did we say what MDA was?
I don't believe so. I don't know a whole lot about MDA off the top of my head, but I do know they say MDMA, Molly, is the more empathetic version of the two. MDA is the more psychedelic version of the two. Yeah, so it's like, I mean, that's the way to put it. It's more psychedelic. It has a more psychedelic headspace. It has more psychedelic visuals. It's just more leaning to the psychedelic family of drugs.
It's more of a sister to acid than.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Okay, so MDA is kind of like candy flipping with both of them together, acid and Molly.
Which they also say, and I haven't tried it, so I can't speak to this. Haven't tried it yet, might add. They say 2CB is very similar to candy flipping. 2CB is just it's its own synthesized drug of the 2C family, but it apparently has really similar effects to taking a little bit of Molly and a little bit of acid.
Yeah. I'm really interested in it, and I really want to take. Experience the range of, the more empathetic psychedelic drugs like Molly.
Oh, absolutely.
There's definitely their own, you hear about acid and the psychedelics that make you see stuff, but nobody really mentions the headspace. And you spoke about the therapeutic options. I feel like MDMA, when you take it, it just lowers this
social filter.
Yeah, the social filter. And that's good or bad depending on, who you're with. But if you're with really good friends, or you're with people, it's just easier to talk about things. Your mind's not really running on what they're thinking about, or what you said, or interpreting what you're going to say from what they're responding. It's just an unfiltered, dumping of information, and people take that, they respond to it most of the time with similar
ideas and emotions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's something I can't stress enough if you've never done MDMA in a group with people. The empathy is really surprising. Like you can connect with someone on such an easy and upfront level that you've never experienced before.
I want to go back to our trip we had a few weeks ago. We talked about the come up, and we hit the peak. When we hit that peak, I think we were like, we started watching some Hearthstone gameplay, and then we switched to some like comedy, like a Tosh.0 kind of theme show.
Really?
Yeah, you were tweaking, so I doubt you could see what was going on the screen. But we were laughing and watching this YouTube. I don't remember. It was like a foreign viral video clip.
Oh yeah. The YouTube channel. They're called Les Dijon, I think, and they're like this really famous European YouTube channel, and they pull like the most viral videos of the internet for the past few days, and they put them into a compilation.
So me, you, and your roommate were just, or me and your roommate at least. I think you were incapacitated still at this moment. We were laughing pretty hard, and we eventually got to the mood where we were like, let's get out of here and let's turn on the bass and listen to music in the living room. And we played DJ for 6 hours, but I just want to speak on the music effect. And I don't know, there's a space with psychedelics that you appreciate music more, I guess.
I think that is a good way to put it. I mean, I'm no musician and I don't know uh, musical nomenclature, but something about psychedelics and what you're about to touch on, specifically MDA, just makes you appreciate music in a way that you really never have before. It changes the sound in such an incredible way. It's really amazing.
Especially with the bass cranked, when you can feel the
Oh
waves
yeah.
of the music break over you, just like your euphoria waves breaking over you. And uh every time the bass would drop, my like body would just very slightly like vibrate, tingle. It wasn't like a thumping in my chest, it was just like a resonating inside me. uh,
Mhm.
and there's I don't want to speak on psychedelic music like we're on shrooms or acid where we're listening to Pink Floyd and stuck to the couch and just staring
Mhm.
off in the distance. We're listening to some more like hit beats, dancing, and I
Yeah,
really
it's oh, sorry.
no, go ahead, go ahead.
It's it is interesting. I my taste in music fluctuate between a few different genres, but I feel like with MDMA, EDM, electronic dance music, that
Mhm.
is the genre to listen to when you roll. Even if it's not my particularly favorite at the time, I don't think anything can beat the electronic beats, the hit of bass. Um, Something about that music and Molly just go together in one of the best combinations you've
I
ever
have a
experienced.
I have a theory that when you're rolling so hard, it's kind of hard for your brain to comprehend music with melodies and lyrics and songs. It's much more easy to process and just go along with just music that doesn't have a path or a reason. It just makes you feel good,
Mm,
and it's the simplest to just enjoy
that's
without really
interesting.
thinking about it. It
I
evokes a
oh,
powerful
sorry.
response.
Yeah, I mean it is incredible. Something I definitely recommend to people. You either create or look up a EDM playlist for when you roll. Um, I was meaning to ask you though. I don't think I ever have. Out of everything you've ever tried, how much do you like MDMA?
Well, I feel like I have a natural tolerance to it
Hmm.
to a degree. I mean, I take it and I still roll. I roll really hard. Sometimes I lose, sometimes I get overwhelmed like a lot of people do, just for brief moments.
Hmm.
uh, Not to say I don't get affected by it, which I do, but in particular of drugs of choices, I don't think MDMA is my number one or number two, inside my top five, because it's just the effect is there and I enjoy it. And I feel like the afterglow, a really positive feeling after an
Hmm.
MDMA trip. But at the same time, I feel like during an MDMA trip, uh, I'm building and I'm building and I'm building, and then like I'm about to reach the cap, the precious peak, and I just don't hit it.
Mm.
I'm making it up the mountain and I stop right before the summit. You know what I mean? Like I feel I'm waiting for the roller coaster to tip, but it just keeps going straight and like a downward slope.
Well, we can definitely look this up, later, but to see if it's safe. But we might need to increase your dose to maybe an initial 250, 260, maybe.
I'm willing to do it, but at the same time, uh, if I'm just dropping more and more and more, maybe it's time to just try something else.
That's true. That's true. I'm trying to get my hands on MDA, which honestly, I prefer the psychedelic side of Molly. Actually, I don't know. I guess the psychedelic side and the empathetic, just euphoric side, they blend together really nicely. But I still love the visuals that I get from it. It's I don't usually get geometric shapes from anything else except for Molly. So I figure if we can, well, if I can get my hands on MDA, that'll be super fantastic to try, especially since like the dose you need for it. Like I think a pretty high dose is 130 milligrams.
Hmm. Do you usually buy it by the gram,
Yeah, I believe so.
like everything else?
Yeah, typically it's really expensive though, almost twice as expensive as Molly in my experience.
Now, do you think with people taking Molly, do you think it changes them in any type of way before and after they've taken the substance?
People say it. People definitely say that it does. I don't think I've had enough trauma that taking Molly would change me
Hmm.
permanently and in like a very clear way. I think after you take it, if there's an overall empathy scale, I think you definitely build excuse me. I think you definitely build empathy points. You just become a more empathetic person. It's easier to see the love in things. But I think that's about it in terms of long-term effects for me. But there's a lot of people with suppressed traumatic memories that MDA allows them to bring forward and face and cope with. And I mean, in those situations, it completely changes that person for the better. Um,
Didn't you say I recently remember some news? Um, was MDMA approved for testing for psycho or not psycho for therapy uses in the United States?
yeah, I think it was a couple weeks ago, so incredibly recent, but it's a it's a big situation. Um, we are testing it. Well, MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. I think they're trying to do therapeutic work with LSD as well, but one step at a time. Um, I think they're working with using Molly in PTSD related therapy for veterans, and they're also using it for couples therapy because, again, like the way this just brings out your empathetic side. If you were with your significant other and you guys both took this, especially in the environment of a therapist, like I
Mhm.
think serious healing and progress could be made with that. Um, I, I I really hope the tests go well. I'm sure they will, and then it'll get passed as a therapeutic drug. I feel like it's something that could definitely help hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people for the better.
Definitely, I believe it have some effect on people holding things in with PTSD survivors of natural events, and
Hmm.
uh, this drug allows them to open up and talk about it, which opening up and talking about it seems a lot easier the said than done, but these people have built up huge extensive walls
Hmm.
holding this stuff back. But the Molly, it makes them it makes it almost effortless to talk about what you're feeling. When we were rolling at your place with your roommate, he brought it up a multiple amount of times. He just said, I love you guys, you guys are the best. You guys are like the coolest dudes. It's very like nice things. You appreciate people more.
Yeah, I mean it's incredible. You just compliment everyone. You just feel so lovey dovey.
Mhm.
You connect with people so naturally and on such an empathetic level. It's I mean it's hard to describe really, but It's fantastic.
It is truly. We talk about it, and you think if you've never tried the substance, well, just opening up to people, you can do that. Just on your own without drug effects, and you can do that.
Hmm.
But there's this high that makes it so much easier. It just makes it natural. And if the both people who are communicating or whoever communicating are both on the substance, then I
Oh
think
yeah,
there's just an effortless flow of just you know
connections.
connection, and you're not holding back this holding back things you're afraid to say or
Yeah,
afraid to
like
talk about.
it's you could be with the person you're closest to in the world, and there are still some things that you would at least hesitate
Hmm.
on saying, or like certain conversations will only happen a handful of times and in the right situation, in the right environment, in the right mood. With this, it just brings it all out. Like some of the deepest talks you could imagine with anyone will be had on MDMA.
I think it's just if you've never, I'm pretty sure everyone's had, you know, generally speaking, lumping everyone together, everyone's had one of those or two of those, those conversations that go on for hours, and
Hmm.
they're very introspective and personal. But I almost guarantee you, if you take the substance, that even with someone you don't know, you can manufacture the same amount of connectivity.
Oh yeah, they actually say as a caveat against taking MDMA, make sure you're at least close friends with and trust the people you're rolling with because you will tell a complete stranger everything about you, and
Hmm.
vice versa.
I want to talk about one of the mutual friends we have, and we introduced him to MDMA. And just to kind of set up this dude's personality, he's a kind of an outgoing, funny type, still kind of reserved. Um, he's funny. He communicates with his buddies. Um, but when he gets around, people he really doesn't know, it takes a while to warm up, just like everybody else, I want to
Hmm.
say. And we introduced him to your roommates, and we started, to roll. And I want to say, like, if you'd never seen us interact, you would say this guy has met your roommates for like the past 3 years. Like, he was telling everything, and nothing was off of his mind. And these guys weren't rolling too, but they could tell, like, he was just disclosing everything, almost to a cringy point. But it was still funny, and we all accepted it, as part of the side effect. And uh it's just nice to see people with that much general honesty, and it's refreshing to see the openness, kind of just you know I don't know how to describe it. He was like Trump, with no filter.
Yeah, I like I mean, there's just a general atmosphere of love that is around when you're on MDMA, especially if you're in a group on MDMA. Um, it's truly incredible. Definitely something to experience. I guess though, before we keep talking, to throw in my 2 cents about how much I like MDMA.
Mhm.
Um, for a while, I really, really enjoyed it. It was my favorite drug after I tried it. But after I tried real LSD, that took its place. But Molly definitely has a place in my heart. It's an amazing drug. I just don't like how it's really limiting. You can only safely take it. They say between, I don't know, 1 to 3 months really is how long you should wait.
Mhm.
I usually just wait a month, but I plan on slowing up. If you take Molly too much, you can quote unquote lose the magic, and that sounds terrible. So I plan on taking longer and longer breaks in between my rolls. But I mean, it's a fantastic chemical for sure.
We spoke on all the positives and all the the therapeutic uses, but there is negative grounds with Molly, just like any other thing. If you abuse it in a certain amount of quantity, just like anything else, it's bad for you. You know,
Mm-hmm.
duh. But I believe we're not scientists here, but I think or I don't want to say our, I think my understanding is that taking the Molly over and over again, it kind of creates a withdrawnness, a tolerance to the amount of serotonin you're taking,
Mm-hmm.
and I believe your happiness is very based off of a general scale of serotonin. So if your body's always getting this blast of serotonin, the highs are high, but the lows are super low.
Yeah, some people, I believe they're called weekend warriors, people that abuse MDMA literally every weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Very quickly, within a month or two, they can fall into a depression that, well, so it's what's called the hangover when you come down.
Mm-hmm.
And like I mentioned earlier, the hangover can just be like you're just mentally, emotionally, and physically just tired and
Mm-hmm.
exhausted. And if you abuse Molly way too much, then your hangovers can start to be 1, 3, 7 day long depressions. Uh, it's a real bitch. Like
It
you have to be
is.
careful
It's a
with it.
real problem, and without drug reform and drug regulation, when you leave it in the hands of the uninformed, there's room to fuck up, and there's people who are gonna fuck up.
Hmm.
Um, you can't have too much of a good thing, and people take it out of control. It's gonna be harmful to them, and
Yeah.
I think that's generally accepted with everything is fast food, um, ibuprofen. I mean, everything taken too much is going to have a negative effect, and I don't think that's necessarily going to stop MDMA progression in the United States.
Oh yeah, it's only getting more popular. I believe it was used in the early '80s clinically, well, psychiatrically. But I think it hit the rave scene in the late '80s, and since then, it's only really grown in popularity.
Uh, and specifically, I'm talking about laws regarding the substance. The really big advocate against MDMA and the other drugs in its family are, what we talked about, the long-lasting effects if you abuse it.
Hmm. Yeah, it can permanently damage your serotonin receptors if you abuse too much of it.
I
It
think
can literally overall lower the amount of serotonin that you produce, just like permanently.
I think I've heard the term before. I'm not, very well educated, but if you look it up, I believe the term's called selective serotonin disease or something of that matter. I'm sure
That,
if you Google it, you'll find
I
something
think you're right.
similar.
Yeah.
Um, Generally, just where if you started working out every single day, you work out and you go hard, and then you just stop, and your body's just so used to this serotonin you're building when you're working out. When you stop, where's your body's like, where is it at? Where's this giant flood of serotonin? And you feel depressed. You feel like, and that's just a general symptom of the come down, or what they call the afterglow. I feel like the last time we rolled really hard, and it's a trait with all really hard rolls, is there is a Molly hangover to some extent.
Yeah.
I feel like
I
the
mean,
last time we
me
rolled.
personally, sorry.
No, go
Um,
ahead.
Me personally, my like the last roll we did was the first time I felt what I would even call a hangover,
Mm-hmm.
and it wasn't bad. I just for God, I remember. I think we rolled on Sunday, I believe. Was it Sunday?
You talking about last time?
I believe so. Yeah.
No, we rolled on a Tuesday night. We went up.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah.
I'm
So we
going up.
yeah, we rode on a Tuesday night, and I had to wake up and go to class the next morning. It was Mardi Gras, had to celebrate.
Yeah, we had to do Fat Tuesday right. And then we were
And
trash Wednesday.
I remember my first class is at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and even during that 1 o'clock class, for like the first 40 or 50 minutes of it, I was mentally checked out. Like I was out of it. I was wiped, just mentally and emotionally. I was just a husk of a person going about what Kirk's daily schedule is.
When I stayed over that night, and I had to drive back to class that started at 12:30. So I think I had like a 2.5 hour drive on me, and during the drive back, I was like, "Oh my god, I'm so exhausted," and I just wanted to pull over and take a nap at the rest station. But I struggled on, and I went straight to class, and I'm in class. I'm like, holy shit, I don't know how I'm gonna make it. I just want to go home and eat and go to bed. Like, I think I've got a pretty good understanding of, when my body is feeling kind of depressed and down, and I really honestly felt, just an offset of my natural feelings, just a general downness, and if someone wasn't expecting that, it would be kind of a shock to them, where they take more Molly, but
Oh yeah, absolutely.
If you know it's going to come, you can kind of expect for it and plan for it, and if you understand what's happening, makes it a lot easier.
Definitely. I think what I will do is I really, really enjoy the empathetic effects of MDMA. Uh, I think I'm definitely going to try to lower my overall Molly dose and just try and save those special psychedelic rolls for every now and then. I don't know what a safe schedule is, but I thoroughly enjoyed the roll we had. But I
feel
mean,
safe for one a month at
okay,
most.
yeah. I guess I could get behind that. I'd start to see what if the hangovers were getting worse, and if they were, I'd probably extend out the
Oh
break.
yeah, definitely, yeah.
Because the bitch with Molly is like, so Molly floods your brain with serotonin, and it just hyperstimulates your serotonin receptors. LSD acts as, again, I'm not a I'm not a scientist. If I get some of this wrong, I apologize. But to the best of my understanding, LSD acts as a sort of pseudo serotonin, so it tricks the serotonin receptors into thinking that it is serotonin, and that's what causes all the distortions and all the typical LSD effects. You can't
That makes sense.
you can't really take acid after you take Molly, because Molly just fries your brain for a good week or two. You can't really take acid. I mean, you could, but the effects would be severely reduced. So I like Molly, but it puts a time constraint on so many things, and it's such a big bomb of a drug to have to do, as opposed to like acid, where you're probably going to be tired the next day. But I mean, if
I've
you
never
wanted,
experienced the hangover effects with many drugs like I have Molly,
yeah,
except like I guess the rival could be alcohol, but I mean that's really all I can think of. I don't really have hangovers from psychoactive stimulant drugs.
Mm.
But off the informative side, I want to talk about what was your first, your very first role?
So the first, what I would consider real role
No, I want to talk
was.
about
Oh
your
yeah, 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 I'll get to
first.
that. I'll get
Okay.
to that. I'll get to that. My first real role was what I described earlier, where I just sat on the ground for 6 hours. But the first time I ever tried it, this was still in high school, and I was heavy in high school. Um, this was senior year. I was probably 280, upwards of 280 pounds.
Yeah, but how tall are you? I mean,
Oh well, 6'5".
yeah, okay. So now that you can see it's spread pretty thin.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Yeah, so I'm kind of a large guy, or I was kind of a large guy, and I only got, I believe, 70 to 100 milligrams
Uh,
of Molly for. It was called Grad Bash. It was our entire senior class at our high
Universal
school
Studios and
went to
Islands of
Universal
Adventure.
Studios. Yeah, and I took it, and I didn't really feel anything. I felt the anxious come up. I took it right before we went in the park. I felt the uh, anxious part of the trip, and it didn't really kick in. The empathetic, my bad. The empathetic effects actually kicked in when I was in line for the roller coaster Dueling Dragons, and I was
Yeah.
just chatting up people in line, just having a good time. And during the roller coaster, I think that's when it like kicked it up for me. Um, it it definitely like hit the on switch for the Molly,
Mm-hmm.
and after the roller coaster, I was probably feeling it
Mr.
decently.
Krabs.
Yes, I was feeling it, Mr. Krabs, decently for 10, 15 minutes, and then it just kind of faded away.
Uh-huh.
Um, so that was my first real.
Yeah, you guys. I was there too, but you guys just sneakily did it without me. I was very, very worried and shocked you would not include me in your trip plans.
I had no idea that at the time it was something you would have been interested in.
I remember you guys actually did it with two other girls.
Hmm.
And one of them actually was kind of losing her composure when you first took it.
So the girl that we're thinking of, she was really thin. I feel like she was probably 90 pounds, maybe 80.
Probably like I wouldn't say okay, maybe she was that then.
I could see 90. 80 is probably a little thin, but I could definitely see 90. Um, she was also short. I don't remember exactly how tall, 5'6", maybe. I don't know, 5'5".
Probably 5'6", 5'7".
Um, just a small girl. And apparently she has heart palpitations, which she told no one until after we took it. But she has such a high metabolism and such a small body that it really kicked in for her. And when we were walking around, there was moments where she would just bust out into random dance moves for a little bit.
I think she started off. I think she said like at the beginning when she was starting to lose her composure, she said something like "my heart hurts," and that's when everybody started kind of getting worried. Like, where was this going to end up? Are we going to be on the 6 o'clock Orlando news? The first person to die during Grad Bash 2015, 2014, whatever it was.
Yeah, everything turned out fine for us, but there were little scares, a few scares with her. After that experience, that's when, and I moved to where I am now, Pensacola. I was able to get my hands on some methadone, and that's what me and Alex tried. For the methadone to be active, like for us to even feel anything, we had to take. We were
500
under
apiece.
500 milligrams a piece, half a gram. And at this time, we were still under the assumption that this was real Molly.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we bought it in like rocks, like
yeah, like I mean, it looked like.
I mean, like these were chunks of it. We weren't necessarily worried that it was, cut with anything, but it goes to show how well we observed.
Mm-hmm. Well, I personally think that shows we need a legalization of most, if not all, substances.
And they have not to cut you off, but they have drug testing kits for Molly, just simple color testing kits, and they offer them pretty much at like every rave, because people don't want people dying at their raves.
Because so much of what's sold as Molly isn't fucking Molly. I think the LD50, which I believe stands for lethal dose 50, it's the mark that it's like the dosage of a drug that at that dosage half of all participants die taking it, and it's usually tested on animals. But I believe
usually tested on animals.
I'm really confident. There might have been some
trials.
some stuff done with slaves in other countries that I'm not aware of that we got the information we have now. But what was I getting at?
You were talking about the lethal dose of Molly.
Oh yeah, the LD50, the dose that half of all, I guess,
Participants diet.
thank you, participants die at is 500 milligrams, half a gram.
Uh,
Um, that's that's incredibly dangerous. If we went this whole time thinking, we can handle half a gram of Molly, that's a good roll, and then we take half a gram of real Molly and
and
fucking
we
end up in the
die. I
hospital.
mean, yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the hospitalizations on Molly are actual dehydrations.
Hmm.
What happens is ravers take them and they dance for 8 to 9 hours on end and they never drink and they actually pass out from dehydration. It's not the Molly, but the Molly effect that really puts them over. And I think a lot of the Molly deaths can be attributed to dehydration.
I bet you could run through the desert or the tundra naked on Molly and you would feel fantastic. It doesn't surprise me that people overheat because everything feels amazing. That's the one downside about feeling that good
Yeah.
is that when something's wrong, you don't notice.
I think the way to describe it is, I've never heard of a bad Molly trip or a roll. You never been met anybody who's like, yeah, I had an awful Molly roll. Like those words have never been spoken like that.
It's weird. I've looked into it, and there are some people. I think if you go into it too anxious, like if you're
Mm-hmm.
just way too terrified of
Yeah.
it, then it can probably result in a bad roll. But for the most part, like I think that chemical really will turn just about anyone's mood around. I can't. I personally can't imagine having a bad experience on Molly, but
I
apparently it
can
has
imagine
happened.
it after the peak hits.
Oh yeah, for
The
sure.
come up, I can definitely see when people are angsty. When I was with our buddy, when he was taking it at my place, you guys just left us, and he was kind of losing, his composure there. I think he was taking a substantial amount, 240,
Hmm.
um, but he was losing composure there.
This is a guy
Dude,
that doesn't do anything
I,
at
t-
all
I
either.
took too much. I took way too much. I messed up, dude. I took way too much. The
Hmm.
typical word you hear when the trip's about to get good. Uh, and I was like, trying to reassure him, no, dude, you took just enough. You're gonna be fine. Don't worry about it. Just lay back, relax. And he's like, nah, man, nah, I don't know. And eventually, like, boom, it just hit him over a wave, and he was just glued to this chair. He was couch bound. His skin became one with the leather.
So one of the things a lot of people recommend for you, the come up, there's a decent amount of anxiety on the come up, and then you hit your peak and you feel fantastic, and then there's your come down, and the come down isn't bad, but it's just you're aware that you're coming down and you
Mm-hmm.
start to be aware of how tired you are. You feel like a parent that's walking away from a long day at Disney. You're just realizing how tired you are. And what a lot of people do and recommend is that you smoke on the come down. It eases the tiredness of what you're feeling, and it
mm-hmm.
can help transition you back into sobriety a little bit easier. Um,
I don't know what the actual. I've heard that as well, and I believe it. In my mind, it may be a placebo effect. I don't know how necessarily well it works because Molly is more of a stimulant and THC is more of a depressant. I think it makes sense that it would even you out.
mhm.
But what do
Well,
you say?
I know recently from that Molly's actually a lot's been happening with Molly recently. The study came out and it was done in rats. So, and this is very new information, but
Yeah, I'm
at
glad
its
they're
core,
getting some good use out of rats. I hate when they snitch on us. You gotta have some use for them. You might as well check on them.
but they introduced THC to rats and they also introduced Molly. And Molly is neurotoxic, which I would equate it to it like squeezing out your brain.
Mm-hmm.
And its neurotoxicity is part of what leads to the hangover. Well, they found out THC, the chemical in Kush and Kush byproducts, uh, is neuroprotective. So there's definitely a schedule. I don't think anyone's really figured it out yet, but there's a schedule where you could smoke weed and get the neuroprotective benefits of it, and then take Molly, and it just lessens the blow of the hangover altogether. Um, I think that's a pretty amazing combination. Which that got me thinking. What would you be interested with trying while mixing Molly with it? Or let me reword that.
I
What do you
think,
want to mix Molly with?
yeah, what I want to, other interactions I want to play with.
Yeah.
I definitely want to candy flip at least once with LSD and Molly.
Hmm.
I feel like the LSD will send that, the visuals in the super overdrive.
I would like to think so too.
And I don't, there's always, worries about mixing drugs. I think
Hmm.
when people start to fuck up is when they start mixing things without being aware of what they're doing.
Hmm.
Because a lot of the drug combinations are toxic. I think, what is it like? You shouldn't take Molly and alcohol.
Oh yeah, that's a super dangerous one. That's like that one can actually kill you. That's a slippery slope.
Yeah. I mean, candy flipping, from what I hear, is safe, quote unquote. But I definitely want to try it one time. I'd be interested to see how it worked with, a more downing kind of psychoactive, maybe shrooms or
Mm.
mescaline even.
I
But
can't remember what it's called. Okay, so I definitely want to try candy flipping as well. I can't remember if it's called dream walking or dream flipping, or I can't remember exactly, but it is apparently a somewhat common thing to take mescaline and Molly together.
huh.
People say it's a good time. I would be interested in trying it with shrooms as well. See, for me, LSD is already naturally so stimulative, and I personally get flushes of just euphoria and wonder and awe when
Mm-hmm.
I'm on LSD. And excuse me, my bad. That was my alarm. Um,
Time to dab.
you know it, bro. Um, yeah, I personally get so much euphoria and stimulation from LSD. I can't really imagine what introducing Molly to it would even do. I'm still interested to try it, but it's just a weird thought. I feel like LSD already incorporates small parts of what
The
makes Molly so
stimulant
great.
effect, yeah.
Yeah.
They definitely, I feel like they're on the same branch, different fruit, but kind of similar in their own ways.
Hmm.
I definitely feel like candy flipping is the way to go.
I,
Maybe have you ever heard about anything with like Molly and DMT?
actually, I think I have, but I don't remember the outcome. I really don't know what that would be like. I feel like with DMT, like you're just so absolutely floored by the wonderment that you can't talk.
I want to see like an extremely happy, you know.
I feel like if you were to compare psychedelics to peppers, that would be like putting jalapenos on a ghost chili. Like one would just completely override the other.
uh, yeah, it probably would.
But
Yeah.
then again, I've never tried it, so I don't know. It's definitely an interesting idea, though.
Hmm. I I want to imagine what it would be like, but I can't. I'm just thinking of like being teleported to like the happiest place on earth. What's what was Michael Jackson's theme park called? That's what.
Was it Neverland?
Yeah, I wish I was in Neverland there.
I feel like it would be fun to smoke DMT at the peak of a Molly trip. I'll look into that and see how much of a thing that is, because that sounds super interesting. Um, oh yeah. But the last thing that I wanted to get your opinion on that I don't think I've ever asked you before is now that we've tried Molly, uh, is it what you thought it would be? Is it what was portrayed in the media?
Hmm. When I took the methadone, that was almost word for word what it was portrayed in the media. You know, a real jumpy, poppy, you know, moving high. And, you know, I felt great and wanted to dance.
Oh,
But
interesting side note. I don't think I apologize. I don't think I gave my my half of what it was
yeah,
like for
your
us to take the
methadone.
methadone. Yeah, yeah. So when I took it, I think I definitely felt the opiate side of it more, or
Yeah.
some kind of downing sedative effect. I feel like I'm naturally a more just relaxed person, so maybe my just personality played into
Hmm.
it. But I wasn't really like,
Yeah, I remember you being kind of just couch stuck, almost, you know, couch stuck at a party. I mean,
yeah,
you were having a good time, but you were, you know, chilling and observing.
yeah.
Uh, we played a lot of beer pong, and that was just fun to watch. Um, but yeah, the your methadone trip was your methadone and your Molly are almost kind of similar in ways that you kind of just stayed stuck.
Hmm.
Um, the Molly, though, to me, it was definitely more sedative. Sedative also being stimulants, just sedative in my physical being and stimulant in my, you know, my mental capacity. Um, what was the question again? One more time.
Was it what you thought it would be?
Okay, okay, okay. Uh, I don't. You know, I kind of expected it to make me want to just, you know, get up and move around for hours on end, but it really didn't do that. Uh, the more effects I had with it were, you know, feelings and interpersonal effects. I feel like it's very pictured as, you know, a psycho, not psycho, a psychedelic visual effects. You know,
Hmm.
people describe it as, you know, you take it and you go to the rave, and that is true. That's where a lot of, you know, there's a lot of visual effects with Molly because, you know, your pupils, you can even see they get about, you know, the size of a saucer of your iris, um, where your
Yeah, see,
pupil.
see, that's an interesting point to raise too. I've never taken Molly at a rave. I think just even being in a different atmosphere, that might
Mhm.
just change the characteristics of the role for me.
Definitely, definitely. It's something I'd be willing to try and something interested in. But how did you, you know, how did you go into it expecting it to be, and how did it really turn out for you?
Um, well, the only part that came true of what I expected it was, you know, I heard music is incredible. It sounds absolutely amazing. And that's what people say more like, you know, when you smoke Kush and you're just on a regular high, which
Mhm.
I can agree that I like music when I'm high, but
I think
it,
everybody can say, you know, I love music when I'm high,
like
but
it doesn't, it's not like this night and day, it's not this night and day in terms of quality
yeah, like
dichotomy for me.
you didn't fall asleep and wake up become Mozart or anything.
Yeah. Like, well, when I'm high, music sounds almost, well, it sounds slightly better than it does sober, but on
Mhm.
Molly, it sounds incredible. Some of just some of the most amazing sounds I've ever heard. Um,
You can
but
listen to music on Molly like you can watch a movie, you know, being sober, just entertainment for hours.
yeah, that's true. I mean, Molly's the kind of drug that you can just put on a record to and listen to it 4 or 5 times in a row, and each song is just as fantastic as it was the last 3 times.
I mean, you could literally probably listen to like two EDM songs like back to back in a playlist, just endless looping, and you probably wouldn't know the difference, honestly.
Yeah, I know. I
But
know there were sometimes like I would think songs were 15 seconds long, and every time I would hear like a familiar hook or something, I'd be like, "Damn, is this still that
yeah,
song?"
I swear the song was playing 30 minutes ago.
But that was the only thing that happened that I expected of it. The sheer euphoria, like that alone, I did not expect that. And like I said, my first real Molly trip was heavily visual. That took me completely by surprise because nowhere in my research did I come across that Molly gave you psychedelic visual effects.
Mhm. Uh, I would definitely say, you know, in a gist, the visuals, comparing to other psychedelics, the visuals are about a 6 out of 10, but the emotional headspace and psychedelic headspace definitely is about an 8 out of 10. With my personal scale of, judging, these different drugs.
I think for me, the visuals, when you get them, they're very clearly defined.
Mm-hmm.
But what's interesting about Molly visuals to me is they're heavily geometric. And the only time I've ever even slightly gotten geometric shapes is during a 200 microgram LSD trip. And even then, it was barely geometric. But with Molly, like, I remember I sat in my living room, and when I cut off my lights, the air itself was made of geometric patterns.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was crazy. It's something I've never seen before. So it's in terms of visuals, it's in like its own little category because I mean, not only is it just a new type of visual, the geometric shapes, it's a huge amount of them. Like with acid, from my experience, I kind of need to look at something and then let my vision adjust to it, 1 to 2 seconds, and then the visual start up. But with Molly, it was like all around me were just these shapes that were coming out of nowhere and just rapidly morphing all over the place.
Yeah, I definitely understand what you mean with acid, you have to stare at something, you just have to have something pull you in, and it takes a few moments. But what you're describing is that, it's all going on around you and you just observe it.
I was in a dome of geometry, and everywhere I looked was just tons of geometric patterns and shapes. It was my worst nightmare. It was like 7th grade all over again.
I was in 7th grade hell.
Shapes everywhere I look.
What's the hypotenuse? Is there anything else you really want to discuss about Molly? Have we left any stone unturned?
Well, yes, I'm sure we've left hundreds of stones unturned, but for 2 guys in college, that's
know nothing about much. We have very approximate knowledge about very few things.
Yeah, I think I'm good.
I think we really covered it kind of well. I'm really excited for the next few episodes. I feel like we're gonna have a shroom episode coming up.
I believe so. Yeah,
that one's gonna be really great for me. I'm really looking forward to that one. A lot of personal stories. That's the call right now. We have to hang up. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.